A second later, you're seated at the anchor desk of the most popular cable news network in America, commanding millions of viewers and making seven figures. The next instant, you're nowhere to be found. Fox News announced their separation from Kimberly Guilfoyle in a single IC line with no explanation or farewell. The quiet was deafening to someone whose career depended on being heard. Why would a network be so desperate as to spend more than $4 million to make someone vanish? The reality of Kimberly Guilfoyle's abrupt departure from Fox News exposes a more sinister aspect of media power and demonstrates how easily a career may fall apart when the cameras stop rolling. You must first comprehend the heights to which Kimberly Guilfoyle had ascended before we can delve into the actual events that transpired behind those Fox News doors. Because it gets harder to fall the higher you go. San Francisco. The tragedy that would drive her for decades began in 1969 when a young girl lost her mother to leukemia at the age of 11. Kimberly Guilfoyle was shaped by suffering rather than wealth. She learned something from that early loss that most people never learn: everything you love can disappear in an instant. Her Puerto Rican mother and her Irish immigrant father, who worked in construction, had established a modest life in the Mission District. However, little Kimberly learned that stability was a myth when her mother passed away from cancer. For the rest of her life, this insight would influence every choice she made. While most of her peers were still deciding what they wanted to do with their lives, she turned that dread into motivation and worked her way through law school. Her first stage was the courtroom. She acquired a unique talent while working as a prosecutor in Los Angeles and then San Francisco: the capacity to humanize complicated cases. She offered stories that juries couldn't ignore in addition to arguing cases. However, this is where the majority of people misremember the story. They believe that she made a planned decision to switch from law to television. The real story is much more fascinating. She was only trying to make ends meet as a legal analyst in 2000 when she appeared in front of the camera for the first time. Her legal career had reached its zenith, her marriage to Gavin Newsom was coming to an end, and she wanted a change of pace. Her on-screen appearance was unexpectedly natural. Kimberly spoke like she was conversing with a friend, in contrast to other legal experts who sounded like they were reading from textbooks. She was confident in her ability to simplify even the most complicated legal disputes into language your grandma could comprehend. That gave viewers total faith in her. She has a regular spot on both sides of court TV by 2004. This was no civil legal conversation. Kimberly was a born gladiator, and this was television as blood sport. She had the ability to passionately advocate both sides of an issue, which would be useful in the party conflicts that would follow. However, Fox News was the one that really made a difference. Kimberly felt this was her chance to play in the major leagues when they contacted in 2006. She rose quickly at Fox. In just 5 years, she had earned the greatest reward: a highly sought-after place on the 5. For her abilities, the format was ideal. She was no longer merely offering legal analysis. She was delving deeply into contentious political discussions and providing incisive analysis on everything from cultural concerns to foreign policy. Kimberly Guilfoyle accomplished something that most TV personalities can only imagine by the middle of the decade. She was now essential. Her pay was commensurate with her worth. 7 figures. The kind of money that carries significant expectations and influence. She was more than just a host on Fox News. She was a brand in her own right. But there are 2 sides to success on television. You are under more scrutiny the higher your profile. And someone very close to Kimberly was keeping a close eye on her. Someone who was going to make all the difference. Like every other month, Kimberly Guilfoyle's July 2018 began as usual. At the height of her influence, she co-hosted The 5 for millions of viewers, inspiring terror among political rivals and admiration from colleagues. Then something occurred. That would rock the media landscape, because the official narrative is completely nonsensical. The statement from Fox News was as concise as it was startling. They announced their separation from her in a single statement. No justification, no goodbye remembrance, and no recognition of her years of devotion. The quiet was deafening to a woman who had worked for more than 10 years to turn Fox's afternoon programming into a ratings powerhouse. High-profile exits don't occur this way, as anyone who has followed the media for any length of time knows. Even in shame, Bill O'Reilly's departure from Fox generated news stories and analysis. It was a media circus when Megyn Kelly left for NBC, but Kimberly Guilfoyle just disappeared. It was a clear and striking contrast. Despite the controversies, O'Reilly had a farewell segment that acknowledged his efforts. Public statements wishing Kelly well were given to her. Guilfoyle received a press release from the company that seemed like a notice of termination. The official story was clean and well organized. Kimberly had made the decision to leave television in order to concentrate on President Trump's 2020 campaign and other political endeavors. On paper, it made sense. She has always been involved in politics. Her campaign efforts provided the high-profile stage she desired, and she had contacts in Republican circles. Here's what didn't stack up, though: time, procedure, and history. The timing was strange, to start. The 2020 election was more than 2 years away, in July 2018. Usually, major campaign positions don't come up so long in advance. Secondly, the procedure was unheard of. It takes time for Fox personalities like Kimberly to fade away. Third, had Fox ever been so keen to let go of one of its top stars without making a big public fuss? In the past, the network had battled to retain much less valuable individuals. It appeared that another factor was at play when Guilfoyle was allowed to leave so simply. Days later, the rumors began to circulate. Insiders in the media started chatting about internal problems and issues that occurred behind the scenes, but what didn't happen was possibly the most telling element. Kimberly hardly mentioned her departure, despite having made her profession outspoken. Her unexpected unwillingness to talk about her leaving was a huge red flag for someone who had never shied away from controversy. She started posting less frequently and generically on social media. Her public remarks were well-planned and succinct. Her abrupt shift to political work was also questionable. Kimberly was attending Trump rallies, collecting money for Republican candidates, and devoting herself to campaign activities with an almost desperate zeal within weeks. She seemed to be attempting to go by so fast that nobody would have chanced to make awkward inquiries. Fox News, meanwhile, proceeded with surgical accuracy. Without a pause, the five went on. No mention of her contributions to the network's success, no sentimental montages, and no recognition that one of its biggest stars had just disappeared. Loyal viewers found this deletion startling. They were witnessing Kimberly's characteristically impassioned commentary one day when she abruptly disappeared the next. Speculation swiftly filled the gap left by the lack of explanation, but the network provided none. We were unaware that 2,000 business boardrooms and legal offices were documenting a completely different story as Kimberly was establishing her new political career and making public appearances. One that would eventually come to light and demonstrate the extent to which Fox News was prepared to go in order to suppress certain stories. The true cause of Kimberly Guilfoyle's departure was kept a secret for 2 years. Behind well-managed public relations and business confidentiality agreements. Then, in October 2020, The New Yorker released an investigative article that appended the meticulously crafted story and exposed a shocking fact that altered our preconceived notions about her departure. The narrative started with a young woman who had accepted what appeared to be her ideal position as an assistant to one of the greatest names on Fox News. Instead, she was left with a nightmare that would follow her for years. In November 2018, months after Kimberly Guilfoyle had already quit the network, this assistant reportedly submitted a 42-page, secret complaint against her, according to The New Yorker. Time was of the essence. It meant that Fox News had been defending her voluntary and cordial departure in the face of severe internal accusations. The magnitude and clarity of the accusations made in that complaint were both startling and unsettling. The assistant said that Guilfoyle had abused her in a way that went well beyond what was deemed appropriate professional conduct, according to people familiar with the allegation. This went beyond inconsiderate remarks and sporadic transgressions of boundaries. According to the accusations, she abused her position of authority to foster a toxic workplace that went beyond any reasonable bounds of professional behavior. As the Fox host presented herself nude, the assistant claimed she was regularly forced to work at Guilfoyle's New York apartment, creating an atmosphere where the young woman felt imprisoned and uneasy but was unable to leave without jeopardizing her employment. The claims that Guilfoyle would show her assistant pictures of men's genitalia from males she had slept with were even more unsettling. These were not chance observations. They were intentional acts intended to control and degrade. Additionally, according to the assistant, Guilfoyle talked endlessly about her S***T life, making her employee listen to explicit details that had nothing to do with work but were all about asserting authority. Guilfoyle allegedly went beyond verbal harassment to make physical demands, according to the complaint. The alleged pattern of conduct went beyond sexual harassment to include more general forms of workplace abuse. According to the complaint, Guilfoyle allegedly asked her assistant to *****ing shoot herself in order to succeed in her career by encouraging her to have affairs with influential and wealthy men. During work trips, she allegedly insisted on her assistant sharing rooms, removing any chance of professional boundaries or privacy. These were not one-off events. The accusations included an ongoing pattern of improper, aggressive, and demeaning behavior that broke all professional conduct standards and made the assistant's position intolerable. The way the assistant attempted to manage the situation is what makes this story even more unsettling. In the hopes that a discussion might fix the problems, she first tried to address these concerns informally. She had no intention of ruining anyone's career. All she wanted was to perform her duties without having to put up with harassment that no worker should have to undergo. She attempted to work within the system after informal attempts failed, assuming that the Human Resources Department at Fox News could handle the matter expertly. However, it is said that matters deteriorated when the assistant ultimately determined she needed to take official action. The New Yorker said that Guilfoyle allegedly tried to sabotage the inquiry, even attempting to buy off the assistant so she wouldn't give information to the attorneys Fox News had hired. The ensuing investigation was costly and extensive. Fox News engaged a third-party legal firm to manage the matter, bringing in professionals with experience in matters involving workplace harassment. The public was completely unaware of what was going on during this months-long procedure. Fox upheld the myth that Kimberly's departure was voluntary even as they dealt with grave internal accusations. Not only was the settlement struck by Fox News noteworthy, it was also astounding. Several stories claim that the network paid the assistant over $4 million to settle the dispute. $4 million. For comparison, that is more than the majority of Americans will make in their lifetimes, paid to settle a single job grievance. This settlement was not a nuisance. This type of funding indicates that Fox News took these accusations seriously and wished to keep the information private. Strict secrecy agreements that forbade the assistant from ever talking about the accusations, the inquiry, or the settlement were attached to the money. The size of the payout begs the uneasy issue of what Fox News management thought had truly transpired. Millions of dollars are not spent by businesses to settle pointless complaints. This money was used to purchase total silence on claims that the network obviously deemed damaging enough to warrant such a large expenditure. Kimberly, meantime, was launching a completely new political action career. Her move to Trump's campaign was intensely personal as well as professional. She had access to the highest echelons of Republican politics and a platform that was comparable to her television job in terms of visibility and power because she was dating Donald Trump Jr. Here's what's interesting, though. She was known for being combative and vocal, so it was surprising that she stopped talking about one particular subject. During public appearances, rallies, and interviews, Kimberly would talk about nearly anything except her exit from Fox News. Her responses to questions from media regarding her departure were eerily succinct and meticulously prepared. She would talk about wanting to work in politics, being excited about new challenges, and being thankful for her time at Fox, but she never gave specifics, never clarified the timeframe, and never addressed how abruptly she left. This apparent hesitation to talk about her own professional background was telling for someone who had never shied away from controversy. It implied that there were elements of her leaving that were too risky to discuss in public. There were several reasons behind the quiet. It safeguarded her new connections in Republican politics, gave her influence over the story around her career change, and, above all, protected Fox News. The network was allowed to proceed without much public attention even after spending millions to resolve grave accusations. The entire thing was handled with surgical precision by Fox News. They paid to guarantee silence, eliminated a potentially troublesome personality, and carried on with their programs uninterrupted. The network avoided the kind of protracted scandal that had dogged them in past years, and The Five continued to be a ratings hit. The settlement guaranteed both permanent silence and financial stability for the assistant. Despite receiving hefty compensation for coming forward with severe charges of workplace assault, she was never allowed to share her tale in public. Not only did the New Yorker piece eventually surface in 2020, but it also exposed the extent to which influential organizations will go to safeguard their reputations and the amount of money they are prepared to spend to purchase silence. After vehement denials from her attorneys, Kimberly finally declared in public that she had never committed any form of job misbehavior. However, Kimberly remained silent about the details even after the tale was made public. She gave a general denial of the accusations, but she avoided getting into specifics, offered no other justifications for her departure, or discussed why Fox News would spend millions to settle baseless charges. Kimberly Guilfoyle was remarkably disciplined in maintaining her public character for years following the New Yorker exposé. She made appearances at rallies, helped Republican candidates raise millions of dollars, and developed a new persona as a political power broker. However, there was more going on behind the surface. After years of carefully crafted public pronouncements, Kimberly finally disclosed the real cost of her retirement from Fox News at the age of 55 in a rare moment of unguarded honesty. She made an admission that stunned everyone who heard it, in a conversation that even longtime political analysts were taken aback by. She was wrecked by the controversy. The statements were more powerful than any business statement, legal brief, or public denial. This was an extraordinary display of vulnerability for someone who had built her career on strength, control, and unwavering confidence. She talked about how, in a few short days, she lost everything she had worked for. Erasure, no defense, no explanation. It was all gone in an instant after 20 years of establishing a profession, relationships, and audience trust. This was not the self-assured, aggressive Kimberly that viewers were accustomed to from political rallies and television. This individual was struggling with the fact that a single accusation, regardless of its veracity, might instantly wipe out decades of professional success. She discussed how some individuals act as though you can simply move on. As if you could change your own narrative and erase all recollection. They don't forget, though. They never do. The controversy is mentioned in each introduction. The accusations are included in each profile. Phrases like, despite her past troubles, qualify every triumph. The admission exposed something that her high-profile relationships, fundraising efforts, and political accomplishments had all failed to conceal. No amount of outside approval could erase the profound psychological wounds caused by the affair. She explained how she went from being respected and looked up to becoming a name that people gossip about. Losing an identity was more significant than simply losing a job. When your entire identity is based on achieving success in your career and being regarded as capable and accomplished, losing that basis completely alters everything. She thought about putting her all into Fox News. Her enthusiasm, her thoughts, and her devotion. She helped create shows, attracted people, and generated revenue for them. And she left as soon as it grew awkward or someone started making accusations. No farewells, no second chances, and no chance to get her defense. Nothing but quiet. Years of political success had not been able to lessen the animosity, which was evident in the obvious bitterness. She had never quite left the shadow of her Fox News exit, even after establishing a new job, falling in love, and staying in the spotlight. Her admissions remarks regarding the nature of power in the media sector were arguably its most illuminating aspects. She had learned that everything, even her career, influence, and seven-figure salary, might vanish in an instant. Founded on accusations that may never be meaningfully confirmed or refuted. She explained how her worst burden had been that quiet. Every step of her rebirth, every public appearance, and every headline that persisted in telling the story had been followed by it. When a part of you is constantly wondering what people know or believe they know, you can't truly move forward. The disclosure also demonstrated how scandal puts public personalities in a difficult position. If you deny too strongly, you'll come across as guilty. If you don't say anything, people will assume the worst. You are accused of avoiding responsibility when you want to move on. There is no way to be fully vindicated or completely redeemed. She admitted that she was still alive and that she had created something new, discovered a new purpose, and fallen in love. She would never be the same person she was before this incident, even though she knew how to change things. No amount of achievement could resurrect the part of her that perished in that quiet. Her introspection raises a troubling query that goes much beyond her particular circumstance. How would you defend your reputation if everything you've worked so hard to build could be destroyed in a single moment, accusation, or choice? How can a negative be proven? How do you protect yourself against rumors? This subject is relevant in a time when charges made on social media have the power to ruin careers, when accusations spread more quickly than facts, and when the rules of the court of public opinion diverge from those of the legal system. Modern scandal has harsh, unforgiving mathematics. Moments of controversy have the power to overshadow decades of accomplishment. Although Kimberly Guilfoyle is still a well-known figure in Republican politics today, she will always be associated with the incident that put an end to her journalistic career. The assistant was paid a lot of money, but she is still prohibited from sharing her side of the story because of confidentiality agreements. Without recognizing the consequences of their silence, Fox News continued on. It was costly, severe, and harmful enough that a major news network was willing to spend millions to keep it secret, regardless of the full truth of what transpired behind those Fox News doors. The true lesson isn't always about innocence or guilt. In a field where speaking the truth is valued, it's about authority, responsibility, and the cost of remaining silent.